Welcome back, guys, to Forgotten Working Class Podcast. And guys, if you're watching this and you like our content, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel, and you'll be able to see a lot more amazing guests.
Today we have with us Richard from Ocean Corporation Welding School. Richard, thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
We have been watching your content, and you guys are doing some awesome things out there at that school. You guys have been around for a long time. You've had some celebrity welders out there, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very
We've
cool.
been in business 52 years now, I believe, and so quite a few commercial divers have come through our program, underwater welders. So we tend to use the phrase underwater welder versus commercial diver. Uh, Underwater welder, self-explanatory. If you tell someone you're a commercial diver, they have no clue what you do. And
Right.
so even underwater, most people don't even know what they do either. So
Well, we actually had Danny Kiterling, who's a welder,
okay.
on our podcast, and we just saw that you had Jesse James out there again. We definitely want to get into some of that, but we'd like to know more about you first.
Okay. So I'm a third generation commercial diver. My dad and grandpa were divers. And so I always used to joke with them saying, you guys should have been doctors or lawyers. I would have had it made. But I got the defective gene and kind of ended up following in their footsteps. I got out the military. Um, Ended up working as a medic on an ambulance. And so the 911 thing. And so I laughed, told a friend of mine, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And so the diving, I've done the military thing, played the done the Rambo stuff, and a lot of fun. But the diving, it's one of those things. If this is what you really want to do, it could be a great career.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. We have a blue collar line. It's called Arcing Ahead Apparel. And we have a slogan here. We call it blue collar blood type.
Yep.
Because
It's because it's in your blood. You either got it or you don't.
Well, that sounds better than you have a defective gene or brain damage.
But it's for the men and women out there who are blue collar, and you grow up in these families doing blue collar.
It's true, because I would say almost 90% of our guests that we have had, they have had blue collar or what they do in their line. Their family somewhere, their father, their mother, grandparents. So you
Right.
just said third generation. It's in your blood.
Yeah, and I started out as doing marketing here, and then kind of transitioned to instructor and doing marketing. And when I first started here about 8 years ago, what I found was a lot of the high schools, the counselors were pushing, you need to go to college and get a 4-year degree. And not everybody is wired to go
No.
to college for 4 years. And then, when you're young, you're still not sure what direction. I'm going to go get a business degree and do what? So if you don't have kind of a goal to put your plan into place, and it's real hard to do when you're young, still trying to figure it out. But the blue collar jobs, um, welders, mechanics, electricians, plumbers, all of that stuff. In addition to making really good money and not having to go to school for 4 years and incurring, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
Yeah.
The difference there, and at least what I've seen, is your blue collar jobs opens up the opportunity for you to start your own business. And so, you can start a welding business, an electrician business, a plumbing business. So there's a lot of benefits. I always tell everyone, you never get rich for working for anyone else. The way you get rich is starting your own business. And so blue collar, that's one of the upsides. Even, your hairstylist. I don't have hair, don't go to a stylist, but when I did, they were making really good money, and next thing you know, they're adding chairs and adding people, and it's nice to be the boss. You got the responsibility, but if you can take a job and turn it into something that you really enjoy, makes life a lot easier going to work every day.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is so rewarding, and a lot of people in the blue collar industries do go on to have their own businesses.
Mhm.
It's awesome. That's why we're here to encourage the youth, don't be afraid of working hard. That's how you're going to make it in this life.
Right. People will pay other people to do stuff they don't want to do. And
Yes.
so,
Right.
especially when it involves manual labor or being uncomfortable. And that's what I tell all of our new students. get comfortable being uncomfortable. You're going to be cold, you're going to be hot, you're going to be tired. That's why you tend to be paid more than someone working in a coffee shop making frappuccinos or something.
Yeah. So you brought up schooling and education and all that. Now, did you finish high school?
Yes. So
Okay.
I actually joined the military and left 3 days before my high school graduation. So I got my diploma, got sent overseas. So I spent 3 years over in the Far East in Japan and traveled through the Far East. Um, got out, then I came to the Ocean Corporation in 1990 to do the commercial diving thing. And yes, I did the military thing, then the diving thing. In between, worked as a medic. Uh, Helped with marketing different kind of businesses in the medical as well as oil and gas commercial diving side.
That's awesome.
Very cool. And now you're in Texas, right?
Correct. We're here in Houston.
Were
Mhm.
you born and raised there?
No, I was born and raised in Louisiana, South Louisiana, because of my dad's profession, commercial diving. 90% of all your commercial divers are probably out of South Louisiana. And if
Really?
you look at a map of oil and gas platforms, rigs, platforms, the majority of them are out of South Louisiana. That's kind of the hub for everything oil and gas related. And so then you got your inland companies that are basically in every state that's got, lakes, rivers, dams, water towers, nuclear plants, that kind of thing. So I ended up going there. That's where my dad was originally from California. Mom was originally from Michigan. He ended up going to Louisiana, getting into the diving, and so that's kind of how I was literally born into the industry.
That's crazy.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
so then you went out to Texas to the school you work for.
When I got sure, I ended up working as a diver, and I was in an accident, couldn't dive anymore. So full disclosure, accident. Someone wasn't um, paying attention, doing what they were supposed to, and it ended up cutting my career short right when I started making really good money. I could afford a pretty girlfriend, and came to a screeching halt kind of thing. So, um, love being around the diving and just the diving in general, the diving industry. And I've known the owner for since I went to school here. And I came in and asked him, I was like, hey, do you need any help here? I'd like to come back home. You go back to your roots. And this was kind of my roots. So I've been here for 8 years doing marketing and teaching, the diving program.
That's awesome. Do you get in the water with them?
I haven't lately. The older you get, it's too much work, and so in the summertime, I will because I just don't like the cold, arthritis, and it hurts. But every now and then, I'll jump in and do some events. Usually, it's when I do social media events or marketing events. Then I might get in to help people do some stuff, just to get some video, picture, and things.
Very cool.
That's crazy.
Well, I know everybody's wondering because I said that you guys have had some celebrity welders out there. A question that we had, did Jesse James learn underwater from you guys?
No, so what's going on is I've known Jesse for a few years. And super cool guy. So the media presents an image, and he's got an image. It's kind of like me on Instagram, and so it's RJ Outlaw, and you have this one image out there, kind of thing, um, that you portray, and it just fits with the whole diving thing for me. And he's got his image and stuff. Um, he's a little bit calmer now, just like most of us. We get a little bit older, but really cool guy, great stories. 200 plus miles an hour on a motorcycle and 400 horsepower Hayabusa and all this stuff. Makes his own guns, ammo, all that. So he's just
Yeah.
a really neat guy. And the first time I met him, he goes, "Hey, do you like to blow stuff up?" I'm like, "All right, what'd you have in mind?" He's like, "Oh, got my explosive license, and I usually blow up old trees and logs out here." He goes, "It just pisses off the neighbors." So he's got that kind of attitude. Just really cool guy. And so about I guess about a month or so ago, he called me up and he goes, "Hey, I'm doing this new thing on." He's got his channel Outlaw TV, and he's doing some shows on blue collar stuff. And so he goes, "Hey, can I come down and get in the water and do underwater welding?" So he came down and we put him in the water, let him do some diving, and in one of our bigger tanks, and he brought a whole film crew, top notch, really good people and everything. And so we shot that, um, and then he went back and they got a lot of the editing and going, okay, we have to come up with a close. He goes, it's not a good fit. So he brought the crew back actually yesterday, and we put him back in so he could get his cert. And so he kept welding a certain way, and so finally I pulled him up. I go, look, try this, do this, this, and this, and he finally did it. And so he was able to pass his 2F underwater, and so he
That's
actually got
awesome.
his AWS underwater welding cert. And I laughed. I go,
Congrats, Jesse.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it
doing that
doesn't make
for
you
an
a
episode,
diver,
that's
but I said it
amazing.
looks pretty cool hanging on the wall. And so
Yeah.
he's somewhat of a perfectionist. So there was a glitch, and I'm like, it's a passable, but it's not a great weld. I'm getting back in. And it's like, good. And so we're pretty much going, yeah, don't get out until it's done. Go to your room until your homework's done. So he got in and nailed it. Really cool guy. Took the time to take pictures with our students, talk to everybody, laid back, just super, super nice guy.
That's
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah, John's been a huge fan for a very
Oh,
long
yeah.
time. We've written to him, we've sent him letters, but we can't get a hold of him. But
Yeah.
yeah, he seems like a
No, no, you
super
won't. No, you won't, because I'll send him a link to this and go, hey man, plug your show in here on their show.
Yeah.
that would be awesome.
Yeah,
But yeah, he seems like just super tedious and he really cares about his work.
But just like you said, he is a perfectionist. I mean, you look
right,
at everything he's built, all his bikes he's built, the cars he's done, and now he's doing guns, like you said, and his guns are like streamlined. They're
right.
absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, the attention to detail, and so he's a real detail oriented guy,
Yeah.
kind of thing, and just top notch. The crew he brought in, when the first time they came in, they had two or three pickup trucks and like a big moving truck full of equipment, and it looked like a movie set out here when they were setting up
Right.
shooting and everything. So it went really good. Like I said, super nice guy, crazy busy, but he would take time to talk to everybody and pictures with everybody. Um, so it worked out really good. So we've had him, and then like you said, we had Danny, and Danny was pretty cool. So it was funny because I knew Danny through Instagram years ago, and he had made a video talking about how dangerous underwater welding is. And then of course I had to comment, and I go, "You stick to dry welding, and I'll stick to underwater." And I was like, "This isn't true. This isn't true." And then a couple years later, um, the folks over at Outlaw Leather and everything had kind of sponsored him, and I ran into him at a high school welding contest. And super nice guy. He's one of the best motivational people. Every time I've seen him, it's always been crazy positive. In spite of everything, he's got it together on there. And
Yeah,
so I
he's
said, "Hey man,
amazing.
want to come get in the water and weld underwater?" He's like, "Yeah." So I called Heather, and she's actually our dean here now, but she was over at Arc Labs Welding School, and I go, "Hey, can you build me a cage?" And she goes, "For what?" I go, "I got Danny, and we're gonna put him in the water. When do you need it by?" And I was like, "Today." And so they cranked up a cage, and yeah, he came out. So we um, put him in the tank, and let him get in there and weld underwater. And so it was a pretty cool thing. And then he was here some months ago, and he was doing some rain welding. So I developed these underwater rods, and he was using it, and we turned a sprinkler on and welding in the rain. And so always a really cool guy, great motivational speaker kind of thing. So he's always got everything's positive out of his mouth. So really super nice, good guy.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
love him.
yeah. I just talked to him last night on the phone. He's an amazing person. We had
And
him
Yeah.
on the
So
podcast. We had him on the
yeah, so,
podcast while he was in the hospital. He had
yeah.
a bone
Yeah.
infection in the hospital, and he was like, "I'll do the podcast right here." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. Yeah. Positive
Awesome
the
guy.
whole time. So we had him, and then a couple of months ago we had young lady. She's the Miss Austin, and so beauty pageant. She came in, and she's deaf, so we had to work out hand signals and everything. We let her get in the water, and then we've had a lot of social media people come in. So each year we do. It's called the Iron Woman. I think we're doing it in September this year. So we invite welders, welding students, welding teachers from all around the country, and they're all females who come in. And
Amazing.
it's we start them off. They do. Uh, the first day is a morning welding competition. They compete at their level. In the afternoon, we take a couple of advanced welders, put them with beginning welders, and they have to do a team build. So last year, we had them build an infinity cube, and it was great because we had these tiny little girls, 5 foot tall, 95 pounds, swinging a sledgehammer, lining stuff up. And um, we had some really good ladies come out. So we had Sharon, Miss Welds, and Emily, and Heather was there, and um just a lot of really quality folks came out. And the ladies came out; they were great mentors and everything. So it was an opportunity for these younger uh, lady welders to meet some of these social media people that, oh wow, she's got 300,000 followers, and all that kind of stuff. So it worked out really good. They end up being friends with them. And the next day we provide dinner, then they come out and they do underwater welding the next day. And so we do a little competition for underwater, and we don't charge anything for it. They have a good time. So we do that. September 21st, we're doing an event for the Wounded Warrior Project. And so we've got a bunch of vets going to come in and get in the water and do some welding. Um, a couple of weeks ago, we just had Space University. And so it's real similar to space and underwater as far as you can get decompression sickness in both and everything. And so over here at Rice University and NASA, they put on this program, and they have about 150 people from 30 different countries that they're engineers and doctors and chemists and biologists that are geared towards space. And so we had 40 of them come over and get in the tank and weld underwater. And so, and we love getting our decompression chamber, run the chamber, all that good stuff. So, pretty good time. We like to do a lot of social media events, and then in November we're putting on a big sea space and medicine conference, and it's going to be in the medical center in Houston. So we've got some of the leading space physicians, some astronauts, and the leading diving doctors coming in to talk about technical and medical stuff. How does outer space relate to diving kind of thing.
Absolutely incredible.
It's amazing.
Fascinating.
Like you guys are doing it like all.
So that was a huge question you had though when you mentioned the decompression chamber and
So I did watch a bunch of your stuff on your
Mhm.
Instagram. I want to get to know who you are before we do our podcast. I want to look at all your
Right.
stuff. And I did see you were talking about, so all right, there's two things. One of them I found interesting was the mid-water welding, and you said that
Okay.
you have to train someone to not touch the bottom and pretty much float while welding, right?
Yeah, so we do welding and construction. And so we start them out, our students, we have several tanks here that vary in depths from 8 feet to 24 feet. So they usually start in a 12-foot tank and they do some fairly heavy construction, 700-pound valves, and they use lift bags and block and tackle to kind of work on their rigging skills. And so we tell everybody rigging is the most important class because if you can't rig and you can't tie your knots, you can't move anything. And if you can't
Yeah.
move it, you can't put it together. So to make it more challenging, once the students start getting something, a project down, and they tend to get bored, I'll take them and do mid-water. So instead of setting it on the bottom, we'll have a project and put it about 10 feet underwater so they can't touch the bottom. Now they have to tie themselves off. They have to sit up on top of it, hang like a monkey, whatever they have to do to try to get the project together. And so
Crazy.
so it's smaller, but it's a really challenging kind of thing.
you were
So
wondering how long they can stay down there.
yes, which so this kind of two questions in a one is my question was how long do they typically stay down? And then I also seen something where you were talking about that if they have to go down so many hundreds of feet, that they go into a is it a decompression chamber, and then they're down there for like a week working if they were on a job,
Right.
something of that sort.
So the way it works is pretty much the deeper you go, the less bottom time, the less work time you have. And so your commercial divers will start out and they'll go down to around 175 feet and they're breathing air from a compressor. And then from there, if they're going deeper, we'll switch them to a mixed gas and it'll be usually a helium and oxygen mixture. And they'll go from roughly 180 to 300 feet on that. If you're going deeper than 300, it's usually going to be 300 to 1,000 feet. And this is called saturation diving. And this is where you have a big, it's called saturation system, but it's basically, it looks like a big propane tank. So if you pictured a big tank, 9 feet diameter by about 30 feet long, and it's got two doors, bunks in it. And then it connects to another chamber called a transfer lock. And this is where your shower and your toilet is. And then connected to that is a bell. And so the system stays on the boat or barge the entire time. So typically here in the US, you'll have 6 divers get in the system and they pressurize it to whatever depth you're diving to. So if you're diving to say 500 feet, you're pressurized to 500 feet. And so you're the equivalent of being 500 feet underwater, but you can look through the little windows and see people walking around. When it's time to dive, you and your bell partner get in the bell and the whole system's pressurized. You close the hatch, seal it up. The crane will lower the bell down to 500 feet. Pressure equalizes. One diver gets out and works, usually about 3 hours, gets back in. Next diver gets out and works 3 hours, gets back in. Close the hatch, pull it up. It mates back up to the system. Those two get out, two more get in. And so the reason is this way they kind of decompress once instead of having to decompress after every dive. So your
That's
body gets saturated with the gas, and then they come up nice and slow to decompress. And
Crazy.
that's
so
wild.
that's your saturation diving, and those jobs are typically 30 days, roughly 28, 30. I've heard of going up to 45. Um, and the upside is the downside is you're stuck in a tube, with 5 other people, and it's not a big tube, not a lot of room to move around. You can't have cell phones or anything that can spark in there. So your food is cooked in the galley in the kitchen, and they have a little pass-through lock, kind of like at the bank or the drugstore where you're passing stuff through. They sit it down. A lot of times after a day or so, you'll lose your sense of taste, and by the time they get you your food, it's usually cold. Why would someone want to do it? Because the pay is usually around 800 to 12, 1400 a day. And
Oh,
so if you get
yeah.
a good set job, 30 days, you 30,000. So that's, again, that's the extreme deep diving. That's not your everyday divers. But still pretty good money. It's not something you have to do. A lot of divers, they go, I don't want to be stuck in a tube. I can do, air, work my way to mixed gas, do deep mixed gas, and I can decompress in the chamber and I'm out and still making really good money.
How
Wow.
awesome. That's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that's crazy.
something else we were wondering, near the power plants and radiation and stuff.
Does that affect you while diving near power plants?
It's just like any other worker. So your power plants are the same as your nuke diving, your nuclear power plant. It's the same as your sewage treatment plants. Divers wear a dry suit, so you don't get anything on you. And then they'll monitor the radiation exposure and how much you can get, just like a welder working in a plant or
Yeah.
valve turner, anything that has to do. I'm not a nuclear guy, but anyone that gets exposed to it, just like your X-ray techs in a hospital, you can only get so much radiation per year. And so, same
Gotcha.
thing with your diving. Um, you have that. So I just joke. I tell everybody just don't get any water on you, or you'll glow in the dark when you pee, or your kids will be born with 2 heads or something.
Oh
Maybe
my God.
superpowers or something.
Yeah.
Mm.
Crazy. So what is this decompression chamber?
Right. So your decompression chamber, again, it's kind of a scaled down version of your saturation diving. Um, it's a 54-inch decompression chamber, meaning it's 54-inch diameter. And actually, since we're here, I'll go try to stroll out here and take you on a 50-cent tour real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
And
How cool,
we
guys.
can, so walking out. And so as we're coming through our bay, we've got about 6 classrooms. Um, Over here is our dive locker. And so this is where we keep our diving helmets. And so, I don't know if you can see this. So here's your super light. So this one they were using for welding. They'll just flip down the lens when they go to weld. And we'll come out this way. And this is Chloe and a couple of students. So we're doing a live podcast. So she's one of our instructors, a couple of troublemaking students.
I listen to my music, I make all types of music.
Everybody's
All
gonna try to plug this though. Yeah. So we come out, we've got our more classrooms out here, and then so here's our decompression chamber. And
Okay.
so you can see it's got two compartments, inner door and an outer lock. Come around, and then here's all your controls. And so we will make sure I can show you all here. We'll turn our air on, and then you have your air supply and then your air exhaust. And so your divers just get in, close the hatch. And the reason for this is as you're diving compressed air, your body builds up nitrogen. And so you have to give your body a chance to get rid of it. So you either have to make water stops or your commercial divers, we go and jump in the chamber, and it cuts down your decompression time. So they get in, usually go to 50 feet, and then we will let them breathe 100% oxygen. And it helps get rid of the nitrogen bubbles, decompress, and that way they're not spending, a lot of time hanging on a rope or a stage in the water. They can decompress faster, and usually your outcomes are going to be better.
How
And then
long
if
do you usually
someone
have to
gets
sit
the
in there for?
bends, I'm sorry.
How long do you usually have to sit in that chamber for?
It depends how deep you go. And so the
Okay.
deeper and the more time you have, the more time you'll spend decompressing in the chamber. So your divers that do your mixed gas diving really deep, they could be in there for hours. But typically you'll get in and you'll be 15-minute increments. And so you could be in for, 20 minutes, you could be in there for hours. And so just depending on how deep you're going and what the decompression schedule is.
Does
So
every underwater welder have to do that? Do they do
no, it's
that?
pretty much only used offshore or deeper inland diving. So they usually don't do it for inland because they're not going deep enough. And so usually
Okay.
you start taking on more, the deeper you go, the more nitrogen you'll absorb. And so that's why it's usually used just for offshore. And
Okay.
then over here, I'll show you real quick. It's our 24-foot tank. And as you can see, we got a couple of divers in here. And so what this does is it simulates two legs of an offshore platform. And so the divers get in and they do some construction projects in here. And see if we can come around. And so as you can see, there's a clamp with a standoff they're putting in. So they're working on the bottom part. As you can see, you got the bubbles coming up.
How deep is it?
This one is 24 feet deep.
Okay.
And so it's got two legs and risers, which are vertical pipelines. Over here is our 12-foot tank where we start them off in. And this is where Jesse was welding it the other day. So we got our table where he was welding. You can see we got some construction pieces, big valves. And so they have to get in, do their rigging, bolt everything together.
So you
And
were
then I'll show
wondering,
you. We go down to then we got our lower deck. I'll come up and see if these guys are still here. So up here for welding is the last module. And so this tank is really dirty because they've been doing the burning in it. And so over here, these are our senior class. And so they're in here attempting the underwater weld.
and how deep is that?
Attempting to anyway. This is only about 8 feet.
Okay.
And so there's Heather and some of our senior guys.
Hey,
This gentleman
guys.
here is he's actually a physician, SpaceX. He's a space doctor. And so he's actually here getting some exposure and some training on diving. So we're
Incredible.
making you famous. Yeah. So
How awesome.
and so we got these guys, and then is he welding or trying? All right, we'll see if we can y'all see him in the water?
A little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I can just see his body right there.
All right, so we'll see if he can get a arc strict light here.
So John was wondering what kind of rods you guys use underwater.
Yeah.
So Um, let's see if we have any. Um, so the rods here, I actually some years ago started making my own underwater rods. So Mako rods, and so there's a couple of different brands. An industry standard for a long time has been Broco. Good rods, but they have a wax coating, and so the wax coating keeps the flux dry until you burn it down. And so
Yeah.
mine don't have the wax on it. It's just the way we manufacture it. And so personal preference, what they like. I make mine, so of course I got a personal preference to using mine. One of the big differences. Oh, I'll show you diver coming up real quick.
That's so cool.
Very cool.
It's
Yeah.
so
Right.
awesome.
So
Yeah, so their lens attaches right to their.
yep. Oh, have him turn this way and show us his lens real quick. You see, just flip it down.
Awesome.
There you go. Yeah, so just instead of a hood, you just have a lens.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool lens that we found works really good. It's a vintage welding lens. So they sent us some to try, and they tend to work really good underwater. So different colors and everything. So plug those guys in. Actually, really, really nice stuff. I just have to make sure I get them back, or students want to walk off with them. So we have that upstairs, and then we'll take a walk downstairs real quick. If y'all
We
have any
were
other questions, just go ahead and throw them out there.
Yeah, you were wondering about, being wet and electricity.
Yes. So I was
And
electrocuted. So I was wondering, in the water, since water is a conductor, how do you ground off and then are able to arc without
right,
feeling
so
any
the
sort of? I've welded in the rain and I've been shocked.
right, so we it's funny. We get folks who are welders when they come here, and I tell them forget everything you learned. And so we only use DC current, obviously, so we don't get anybody electrocuted. And then we like to run DCEN, electrode negative, and so we always tell everyone pig positive is ground. To keep from getting shocked, we have rubber gloves. We usually have them wearing a wetsuit top, and then we pretty much tell them to keep your ground and your stinger in front of you. Don't get between it. A lot of welders like to wrap the lead around their arms or around their neck,
Yeah.
and we're going, no, keep it in front of you. So if you got a little break in the insulation, you'll get a zap. It's one of those, you might get a zap that doesn't, it's not going to kill you or melt your fillings or any of that stuff. But it's yeah, the biggest difference once you're in the water is your electrode has to maintain contact with the metal the whole time. And so because the water cools the puddle, you really can't see a puddle. So I tell everyone, get used to welding by feel. And then it's pretty much just your angle and your speed. And I tell them when they first start out, just do a slow drag all the way across.
See, that's what Danny was telling me last night when we were talking, because I've welded. I used to weld on the job all the time, but I've never done underwater welding. I know nothing about it. And we're talking about it, and he was like, if you've welded with 7018, 7018 rod, you can pretty much just lay
Lay
on
it
it and
down.
it'll go down.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's pretty much the same thing with underwater welding is you don't have very much movement. You're just laying the rod down.
You let the rod do the work. Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. And so it can be a little challenging at times, but yeah, to me, it's easier to weld underwater than topside. I tell everyone there's an art to welding. I'm not an artist, so there's an art to welding and making a pretty weld. And so for me, it's always easier to weld underwater. Um, but the folks we get who have been welders, a lot of times they kind of struggle with it because they're used to the muscle memory.
Yeah.
And Jesse's a perfect example. He's wanting to weld the way he's always welded. And I always tell him, turn off your welder brain and put on your lazy diver brain. Let the rod do the work.
That's what I was thinking is because when I weld, I usually do C's or figure eights.
Right.
And it's muscle memory, right? When you grab that stinger, that's what your arm wants to start to do.
Right. And so we get them. So but it's like any welding. It's just practice. And so our guys, they start out with dry welding, stick welding. We only use stick underwater. And then they'll do the underwater. And if we have a bigger class or they're interested, we have a wet welding cert where we turn a sprinkler head on with their welding on. And so it's kind of funny. They pull the hood up and all the water pours out. And so we actually took some of my rods. I figure if they work underwater, will they work wet? And so we welded some groove pieces and we got them X-rayed and UT'd, and our tinsel was still 82,000. So worked out really good.
That's awesome.
So for the younger generations, and we're encouraging people to go into blue collar because it's so rewarding. I was looking, and you guys offer financial aid.
Right. Yeah, a lot
Uh,
of the a lot of your vocational schools, your welding schools, and everything, they'll have different kinds of financial aid. AWS is a great organization for your welders that they give out scholarships. So we tell them, you can go there, you can apply for your here in Texas called workforce, and then your VA, GI Bill, all that good stuff. Helps out with that. And for our school, we're looking at like 25,000, I believe, with how much it is, and it's 7.5 months. And it seems like it's a lot of money, but um, most of our guys get out and they're making 60 plus. And I'm going, where are you going to get a job? Where you're in school less than a year and you're starting
Yeah,
out at 60,000.
yeah,
So now the disclaimer is, okay, is that diving? That's just the guys who are not diving a whole lot starting out. They're spending a lot of time offshore, that kind of thing. And so real quick, I'm not sure if it's going to be a question, but some of the negative stuff. Um, everyone's like, it cuts your life short and it crushes your bones and all that. And
I had the
so
question.
I did a video called the myths about underwater welding, misunderstandings. And so there's a lot of people that put a lot of just flat out wrong information out there. Um, so there's no age limit. It doesn't cut your life. You don't die in 10 years. And I always laugh. They go, well, A, who would do a job that's going to cut their life short? And
right.
Yeah,
B, how does that work? You get to like 9 months, 9 years and 11 months, and you have to stop. Can you push it a couple days? And so it's not the diving that tends to cut their life short. Usually, your divers, it's how they behave when they're on the beach. So divers tend to party quite a bit and make a bunch of money. You've been offshore for 30 days, go in and spend a bunch of
yeah,
money. So my younger years, my favorite thing was a limo service out of New Orleans, and they had my name on a first name basis. And I'm like, I just got in after being offshore for 6 weeks. I need a limo. Well, when do you need it? As fast as you can get it here. For how long? 5 days. Just keep them rotating every 8 hours and party. And then after, 2 or 3 days, you go, oh, I'm broke. I got to go back offshore again. But like I said, it goes back to that defective gene kind of thing.
Defective gene. I love it. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And
so
but there are divers in the UK that there's some saturation divers over in the UK that are 69, 70 years old, and they're still doing the deep saturation diving. So it's
oh
pretty much as
wow,
long as you stay healthy, you're good. So I tell everybody that um, it's your dive expectancy, not your life expectancy. And so what happens, your divers get into diving and um, they go from tender and then they make diver and they start making money and they start living the lifestyle and they get the toys. And I always joke and tell everybody that divers, that like sailboats and gold watches and Cadillacs and sailboats and condos on the beach kind of thing and stripper
Harley.
girlfriends. And then they turn around and you run across and he's been doing it for the last 15 years and um, meets the school teacher, the nurse, and falls in love. And it's I don't want to do this anymore. I had to do something on land. And so, as a commercial diver in the Gulf of Mexico, you'll spend 6 to 9 months out of the year offshore, not all at once. And so it's real stressful on relationships because you don't
yeah,
have a set schedule. Some people work 14 and 7 or 21 and 7 or 30 and 14. For your divers, we call it the season. It's going to be your spring and summer is when divers are busiest. And then you can't say, okay, honey, I'll see you in a week. It's I'll see you when I get back because you might go on a 1 week job and then pick up a 3 week job. Well, you don't want to turn down work. And so you may probably never going to have a cell connection. You may or may not have Wi-Fi out there. You can even still old school it, write a letter if there's anybody knows how to write a letter and put a stamp on it. And crew boats pick up the mail and they bring out supplies and they'll take mail back into you and everything. So, total side note there, I actually am one of the few, if not only, people to get served divorce papers offshore. So I happened to be in the galley eating with a friend of mine. They came in and handed me this brown envelope, and the supervisor goes, "What's that?" I opened it up, and he goes, "Man, he goes, it's divorce papers." And he's like, "God, it's terrible. Do you need to go in?" I go, "No, I'm making so much money I can get a pretty wife and girlfriend now." And so I always joke about telling everyone, they're like, "What's the worst thing that can happen to you? You get attacked by a shark or electrocuted." And I'm like, "Worse than that. Like, what's worse than that?" And I go, "You're offshore making lots of money and your girlfriend meets your wife. Horrible, bad situation. You come in and all your stuff's gone." So,
Oh my
so
god.
that
So
wasn't
you
me. I wasn't a dog like that. That was a friend of mine. So I would have
Oh
to do
no.
that for
you just mentioned being attacked by a shark and all that. Okay.
right.
I seen on your
So,
Instagram you had a suit of Kevlar.
right. So there's to the best of my knowledge, there's never been a commercial diver attacked by a shark. You've got a helmet, a tank on your back, and hose and noise, and you're not food. So they kind of check you out and swim off. And there's always someone's like, "Oh no, my neighbor's cousin's uncle's nephew was a diver and he was welding and the light attracts the shark and the shark came and he had to punch it in the nose and he had to gouge it in the eye with a welding rod." And I laugh and I tell them that story came from me about 30 years ago to impress the ladies in the bar, you know. And then I learned it from my dad 20 years before, and he learned it from my grandpa back in the 40s. So um, it sounds cool, but no, you don't really worry about sea critters, any of that stuff. Your biggest concern is putting your hands and toes where they don't belong. And so, pinch points, don't get your stuff between
Yeah,
there, manage your hose, because you're working with the word I use is ginormous, a lot of crazy, big, heavy stuff. And when things go wrong underwater, for the most part, it's a really safe job. But when things do go wrong, they go wrong quick. And so
I can
that's what
imagine
we
that.
do, a lot of emergency drills, emergency procedures. We have a procedure for almost any situation. So you just go back to your training, follow your procedure, and pretty much we can get you out of just about anything.
That's amazing. That's
That
incredible.
yeah, it's huge that you guys do that. I mean, to be that far under the water and know how to save each other and help each other
Yeah,
in a time of need is big.
Right. Well, our commercial divers, we do a little intro to scuba. So your commercial divers typically don't use scuba gear. So they've got surface supply. They'll have two big compressors, high pressure air. They'll have an emergency air bottle on their back called a bailout. So you got three or four sources of air. You've got communications with topside. So you have speakers in your helmet. They go up to the radio so you can talk to the people the whole time. They've usually got a camera and a light mounted on your helmet so the people topside can see what you're doing, and they're usually recording it for inspection purposes. Um, so everybody topside can see you, they can hear you, you can talk to them, and the as far as the wetsuit, what's going on is I like to come up with new stuff, tinker around, and years ago I ran across we needed some new slings for diving and our training, and I ran across it's called plasma rope, and I was like, wow, this stuff is stronger than steel. And then I started looking more into it, and then there's a rope called Dyneema, and I believe it's about 15 times stronger than steel. And so for years and years, everybody would just wear a neoprene wetsuit. They still do. And so I found a place that had Dyneema fabric. And so we put the fabric on the outside of the wetsuit and it makes it cut and abrasion resistant. And so we tested down in Galveston and some guys, rubbing against a log or something, and the oysters and the barnacles cut their wetsuit. And the guys that tested my suit were rubbing all over it and didn't get anything. So
that's
it gives a
amazing.
layer,
Yeah.
extra layer of insulation to keep you warm, but it helps against getting your wetsuit torn up. Usually, your divers will just throw on a pair of coveralls or something to help give them some protection, so they're not tearing up their wetsuits.
You are incredibly
Yeah.
smart. I mean, wow.
Well, I'm still working
Wow.
here, so I'm not all that smart. So,
Stop it. You are
I,
an asset to the underwater welding world.
Which
I get bored and I like to come up with new stuff. So, yeah, a little bit of here and there, all kind of stuff.
yeah, you're coming up with stuff that truly helps people.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I did have a question about the school,
Okay.
and you've said there's so many different people coming around from different countries around the world coming to this school. Are you guys like the top underwater welding school in the United States? Or
Of
is there a
course we are.
different one?
I mean,
Yeah.
the like I said, I'm a little partial for here. There's a school in Seattle, and they've been around about 50 years. Really good school up there. Um, I've known some of the instructors and everything, so it's a real quality school. They've had some get shut down over the last couple of years, doing some things they shouldn't have been doing. Um, but it's you got a handful. So in New Jersey, they have one, and it's kind of my understanding is run by a union, and they have they have their specific needs. The one in Seattle, they train guys to use underwater chainsaws. We don't get a lot of trees in the Gulf of Mexico, because they're working on rivers and lakes and everything up there. So it's kind of a different environment. It doesn't mean those guys won't come down to the Gulf of Mexico or our guys won't go north. It just what's your need and in your immediate area. So we
Gotcha.
tend to focus on what they'll be doing in the Gulf of Mexico, oil and gas stuff. They do, the construction as well as some of the hydraulic tools and everything. So we don't do that. And then you have other schools that do kind of a combination in between.
Listen, if Jesse James and Danny Kiterling and Miss Texas are coming to your
Well, that's
school,
what I was saying.
obviously it's the best.
That's what I was getting at, is that I didn't know how many were in the United States, because you were saying how many people from around the
Yeah,
world come to this.
there used to be about 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know of
And
about six right off. So there's another one in Texas up near Dallas, Arizona, California, Seattle, New Jersey, and then you've got us. We're the only ones really on the Gulf Coast, from Texas all the way over to Florida.
Okay.
very cool. This has been an amazing,
Lots of information.
yeah.
Definitely lots of information that
All right. Well, next time we do an event,
very
I
helpful.
will send you guys an invite if y'all want to come, put a hat on, get in the water,
That would
and
be
give it a
awesome.
try.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so, like I said, September, we're looking at doing our Wounded Warrior project, so that's gonna be a lot of fun. Also in September, October, we'll probably do our Iron Woman, and so, we're just waiting to hear back from one of the welding schools on doing the dry welding there, and then, I'll let you know when we do those if y'all wanna come out, put on a hat, jump in the water, and try it out.
That would be
Yeah.
amazing. The Iron Woman, that is so awesome. We've
So
had,
yes, which today I have another one, is that we have had multiple women on our podcast that are blue collar, and we support them 100%. I love seeing the women in the trades, because the it's more and more that are coming out that are getting into the trades, and I love it.
Right.
one of our
Yeah,
guests was
Marnie,
actually,
so go ahead, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
One of our female guests was actually on the show Top Welder. Her name was Hunter. She's a badass.
Yeah, and then, we've had quite a few of the ladies out there. So we've got, Lindsay, Blue Collar Barbie, and, um, just a bunch of these ladies from, the welding industry that have come from around the country, and it was really cool when you see all the social media folks come in and, in the past, we had Stephanie Hoffman, Ray Ripple, and, Outlaw Leather got them to come in. So it's one of those just kinda bucket list things that people you don't
Yeah.
wanna do it as a career, but it'd be cool to try it and do it. And
Absolutely.
so, we've done a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, we always looking for new opportunities to, promote the business and let people see, it's not going to kill you in, 7 years. And, I don't use the word dangerous relating to diving. I just say there's risk and you minimize the risk. I ride my motorcycle through Houston to school. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
People drive like maniacs here. So, um,
Same thing.
yeah, but and I tell everyone it's if you see a burning building, people run out. The firefighters show up. And they go, that's the office I'm trained to work in. And so they throw in their gear and they go in. Offshore, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and all you see is darkness and some waves, most people won't jump in the water, to go down, however deep to work in the water at 3 o'clock in the morning. But a diver's like, okay, that's my office. That's where I'm trained to work. And I always liked diving at night because it was cooler. Things are slowed down, and simply because you can't see on the deck as well. And so in the water, divers are diving in zero visibility water, murky water, whatever. That divers don't care. It makes it easier if it's clear water, but if not, no big deal. But
It's a
again, it's
lifestyle.
rougher weather in the winter months. It gets a lot wind and storms, and your offshore work tends to slow down because everything is rocking and rolling on the boat and the barge, and so it's just a little more dangerous.
How awesome.
Yeah. It's a blood type, blue collar blood type. It's in your blood.
Exactly. And so the big thing for us, you don't have to be a diver to come here. You don't even have to be a good swimmer. I'm not a good swimmer, and I joke and I go, you just have to be able to sink. We have a hose, we'll pull you back up. So if you can sink, you can dive, kind of thing. You just have to be comfortable in the water. You don't have to be a big musclehead gorilla. It helps because you're doing manual labor. And so what I tell everyone is commercial diving, if you're a welder, you get in your truck, you drive, weld, you get in your truck and go home. If you're a diver, your helmet is your transportation to get you to the work site. And so once you get there, you welding, you're burning, your nuts and bolts, inspection, jetting, whatever needs to be done. So that's just your ride to get to the work site. And then you're
Very
just a construction worker. Pretty cool construction work, but yeah, that's the way I look at it.
Definitely. Definitely cool.
well, Richard, you have 2 friends down here in South Florida. If you ever make your way down to West Palm Beach, let us know.
Yep, I've been down there. I love Miami. And I had friends down in the Keys that ran the hyperbaric units down there for the scuba divers. And I'm going to Panama City Beach in 2 weeks for vacation. So I
Nice.
love the
Nice.
Redneck Riviera. I've got white sand, emerald green waters, and Walmart. What else does a redneck need?
Oh, we have Bucky's too. Bucky's
Yeah.
is down
Yeah.
here now.
Oh, you got Buc-ee's now?
We
Yeah.
do.
Oh yeah, that's started over here in Texas, so that
Yeah.
is the place. And if you want to find a clean bathroom, you go to Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's and
Right.
clean bathroom and beaver nuggets, and their iced tea is really good. I'll plug Buc-ee's in there. But
All
yeah,
right.
I will turn around and tell Jesse that we plugged them on here, and if y'all send me a link to it, I'll shoot it over to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so
And
much. This has
sure,
been
and
amazing.
you're welcome. Anyone needs to reach out to me, Richard at Ocean Corp, and then on Instagram, RJ Outlaw. So that's one of my personalities. Multiple personalities kind of thing. But yeah, people feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be glad to pass along some more information. And
Absolutely.
thank
I
y'all
will
for
be
having me.
We're honored. It
yeah.
was awesome.
All right,
I'll
thanks
be
a lot, and I'll
dropping
let you guys know when we do our next event, and see if we can get y'all to jump on a plane, come over, and we'll throw you in the water.
Yeah.
that would be amazing for everybody watching. I will be dropping all of Richard's links in the description. Go follow him on all social media. Email him if you have questions about going to school. And if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, email me, Tiffany, at forgottenworkingclasspodcast@gmail.com. Richard, thank you so much
All right,
again.
thanks a lot. Y'all have a great weekend.
You
You
too.
too.